Good morning, Washington, Baltimore, all the ships at sea. It's the 28th of March, 1962, 2013. How y'all doing, everybody? Well, the big news from the big news was WTOP. WTOP is the top biller, top ad revenue biller in the whole country for the third year in a row. That's pretty amazing because Washington is the 8th largest radio market in the country. You know, there's like 6 or 7 markets that are bigger than Washington. And yet, here's a station in market number 8 that is outbilling stations in New York and LA and Chicago, which are much larger markets. And that's kind of interesting. $64 million TOP billed, and that's even up from $60 million the year before. This was 2012's number, and compared to 2011's number. Kind of amazing. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that WTOP is so well positioned for that federal government money. You know, there's so many groups in Washington that want to affect the federal government. You got defense contractors and lobbying groups and all this other stuff, and they realize that WTOP is a magnificent way to reach all these lawmakers and power pushers and whatever you call it. And so they spend a lot of money on advertising on WTOP. And it's interesting how you can look at Hubbard, which has pretty much, well, they have 2 stations actually. Well, yeah, you know, they have WTOP and they got Federal News Radio, and even Federal News Radio here in the Washington market, while it doesn't bill anywhere near what TOP does, for a station that doesn't really rank too well in the ratings. I mean, they're lucky if they get 35th place. They still bill pretty good. So that's all very interesting. What's that going to mean now? I'm communicating with a bunch of my other radio gurus around, and we're trying to figure out what does this mean for CBS and WNEW. And as you all know, if you're a fan of this website, that CBS a year ago, back in January of 2012, started WNEW, another all-newser in the market. Okay, and one of the main goals was to get at some of that big revenue money for WTOP. You know, WTOP is this giant cash cow, and so obviously CBS is looking and saying, you know what, we run all newsers in all these northeastern markets like New York and Philly and stuff, and all over the country, and we know how to do it, and we're gonna just push our way into Washington, and we're going to see if we can get some of that WTOP money. Well, in 2012, it didn't happen. You know, if TOP increased the amount of money it made, it increased it by $4 million. So it'll be interesting to see when the radio revenue numbers come out for all the Washington market. We can look at all the other stations, whether WNEW, what kind of money they're making over there. You know, is it anything significant? But obviously, they haven't even made a dent on WTOP. Now, in the ratings, again, they haven't really made a dent on WTOP in their first year. WNEW has. Now, you know, the ratings for WTOP are basically unchanged. WTOP may not always be in the number 1 position, but they're, you know, sometimes they're number 2. But, you know, they're either 1 or 2 with WAMU. If anybody's had a ratings effect on WTOP, it's been WAMU, simply because this is a huge public radio talk market, and WAMU is pretty much it. You know, there isn't really another public radio talk station in this market. So that's where the battle is between those 2 stations, with WNEW way down on the sidelines. Now, yes, WNEW's ratings have gone up a little bit in the last year. They're no longer like 30th place or 28th place. They're now pushing at the low end, you know, threatening to maybe enter the top 20 at 22nd place. But still, you know, you got to say, failure. You know, they just haven't made a dent on WTOP, and WTOP is actually doing better. WTOP is making more money this year. They made more money in 2012 with competition than they made the previous year without any all-news competition in the market. So take that, Steve Swenson and Dan Mason over there at CBS. So the question is, my radio gurus, who shall be nameless, what is CBS going to do now with WNEW? And one of my radio gurus, quote, I just can't see them agreeing to go into a third year doing so poorly. Maybe we'll hear all Christmas music in December on 99.1. That's when many of their personal service contracts end, unquote, for WNEW. So, you know, this highly placed radio guru is telling me that he thinks that CBS will keep WNEW running up through the end of the year, up into December, and then probably just slip something else there on 99.1. I don't know. You know, again, that is still, you know, that the WTOP pile cache is still pretty huge, and it's a pretty big attraction. And I would have to say, I personally would think CBS is going to continue with WNEW into 2014 and maybe even beyond because, number one, they desperately want to have an all-newser here in the Washington market, which is pretty much like the capital of the news markets across the country. They desperately want to have that, and they still see this giant pile of revenue there at TOP for the taking. And maybe they haven't gotten the right formula for it right now, but they still see that as a possibility. So I can't see CBS pulling the plug on WNEW anytime soon. Again, what we've said time and time again, the problem that CBS has in this market, this is one of their most problematic markets. You know, CBS does really well in New York, and Chicago, and Boston. They have stations in the top 10. Here in the Washington market, they don't. There are frequently many ratings periods where they don't have a station in the top 10. You know, look at the latest numbers. You know, the top station in the market was Fresh, 94.7 for CBS at 11th place. PGC was down at 17th place. PGC was always the top performer. JFK didn't even make it into the top 20 in the latest ratings. So CBS has got some serious problems in this market. One of the potentials for CBS is El Zal. You know, they pretty much have the only major Spanish language station in the Washington market, which is getting a lot of Spanish language listeners in it, and yet it's on a crappy signal. So CBS needs to do something to at least get one station consistently in the top 10, and that would be to move El Zal onto 99, 94.7 or 95.5 for their two inside the Beltway signals, or maybe 106.7. But CBS, the problem CBS has is signal. They have a bunch of crappy signals, and you know, they have 2 good FM signals and 4 FMers, and that's their problem. It's, you know, Steve Swenson hasn't been able to turn around that slump that's been going on at CBS here in Washington. You know what I think? I think, you know, maybe they ought to take like 94.7 and put El Zal on it and at least really market the hell out of that and make that El Zal a top 10 performer every week. And that would do that. And then another thing they could do is take PGC and completely... Here's what you do with PGC. Here's what I would do with PGC, okay? I would say go back to the heritage PGC. Go back to the PGC of the 1970s. Go back to an oldies format based on 1970s music with a heavy, heavy dose of soul oldies. Okay? So PGC would go back to being that great station it was in 1970s with all those cool old jingles. A really good oldies station with a heavy dose of soul oldies. Lots of Temptations and Supremes and the Marvelettes and stuff like that, and really make it a, you know, mixed race, strong oldies station. And, you know, just get rid of what, you know, stop trying to compete with KYS and stop trying to go up against Hot 99.5 and move it over. So you have a reconfigured, re-energized heritage PGC. You have a strong El Zal on 94.7, and then blow the rest of the stations up. I don't know. You got to get some more signals. Dan Mason has got to buy some more signals here in Washington. 105.1, you know, from Salem. I don't know. Pay through the nose for that. I don't know what. But they need some better signals and to reconfigure some of their things. I don't know. They're in a mess. CBS is in a giant mess here in Washington. And I don't know. Let's look at the revenue numbers, though, and see what WNEW is going to turn out. Be interesting to see what they make. You know, if they make $15 million, you know, maybe, and then the possibility of making 20, 25 million next year, and maybe starting to cut into TOP in 2013, or you know, that may be worth doing, you know. So, but again, NEW needs, you know, they need to get on other signals, and I just, you know, if it means buying 92.5 from Centennial, if it means getting 99.9 from that Aloha Trust there in Frederick. But they need to get an improvement of that 99.1 signal, and they need to do it soon if they're going to keep this station running and if they're going to really start making it a viable alternative to WTOP, which is something they haven't been able to do. And again, CBS needs to break the mold to get rid of that stupid radio.com template crap they got on their website and really build out WNEW into a really cool friggin' website. You know, one of the things TOP, one of the things, the brilliant things Jim Farley and Joel Oxley, Jim and Joel have done at TOP is they've broken the mold and said, you know, on mobile, we're on the web, we're doing all this other stuff. It's not just radio. And CBS needs to start thinking the same way because their website continues to suck for WNEW. It's bad. So anyhow, there's what we're going to do. So anyhow, congratulations to TOP. Another banner year for that. Be interesting to see, though, you know, where the numbers for the rest of the market. Again, we do these ratings every week. Ratings, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is revenue. And once a year, we get those revenue numbers. And that's basically all that matters because radio is money, at least in the corporate business that it is today. And TOP is far and away, you know, making probably triple, at least triple what the second place station in the market is making in terms of ad revenue. And that's just simply amazing, baby. All right, thanks for watching Dave TV for this Thursday, the 28th of March, 2013. Aloha, baby.